Hello YouTube. So I was thinking about a portable solution for preppers that you could actually take with you if you had short notice or you had to pack up very quickly, that you could throw into a car. So there's a couple of caveats when putting a system like this together, and I had to think about what would I do if I designed a system, what would I need. So let's have a look at the list of things that have to be considered. So the first one would be that it must be mobile and easy to load into a car, lightweight. Definitely lightweight. You should be able to pick it up or at least wheel it easy to the car and lift it up and put it into the car. The second thing must be that it must have communications and emergency power. Obviously that's obvious, it needs to have emergency power, but communications as well is very important, so we need communications. The monitoring of resources. So if you're going to be using power in this solution, you need to be able to monitor to find how much power you have left, how much you're using, and obviously if you're charging it, how much power it's being charged by with solar energy, etc, etc. So you need to monitor them resources. It needs to have a recharging facility. Obviously solar power would be the first choice. Then obviously it needs to have a mains power facility for standby power. If you have it plugged into the mains and have it on standby, so if something happens and you need to pack up quickly, then you know that it's going to be fully charged and ready to go. Or if you find another location that has power, you can plug it back into the power and use the power to power the device rather than using up the battery power that you'd have in it. So having the mains option would be good. Light and heat. Right, you want to have a light if you're in dark, somewhere dark or it's dark, you need to be able to plug in a light. And if you're somewhere where it's cold, you need to have some kind of heat. Well, nothing too much, but at least if you have a little heater, it's something. And obviously the optional extras would be a 500 watt inverter or some kind of inverter. But that would be a nice to have, because how many items will you need to power if you're stuck up a mountain or in a cave or whatever? You won't be really powering anything too powerful. You'll be just sticking to the 12 volts mainly. Let's have a look at these solutions. So the first thing you need to do is get a case. So you need a case that's quite portable, on wheels preferably, and this is an 8U case, quite sturdy. It could take a bit of a kicking, you can lift it by a handle, but it's on wheels, and you can rack mount all the equipment that you need in this case. You can get this on toman.de. So the way I see it is this has to be a compact unit. Now you can get small solar panels that could bolt on to the cases of this box. So where the cases actually come off or detach, them two sides, the back and front, on the top you could put the solar panels and run the cables into the actual battery or into the charge controller, which you'll see later. So that would be a good idea if you could mount the solar panels, two solar panels, maybe 20 watt solar panels on both ends of the case. So again, it's all self-contained. Okay, so I did say that this unit would be rack mount. So on the back of the unit you have the options for power. Now as I said, you would need to have mains power for this unit, so it'll be fully charged and ready to go at any time. And also you could take a tapping from the internal battery and have a plus and minus on the back of the rack as well if you need to have external power for whatever reason for something. So the power supply that I have there on screen is a 13.8 volt power supply. You get 12 volts from that as well. They're very cheap, you get them on AliExpress, and that could be your mains power supply that you could use. And if you need more power or need more tappings from that power supply, there's enough terminals on there to do. The next power option you need is a deep cycle battery. Now, I've only gone for the 12 volt 100 amp hour battery because they're quite small. If you start going bigger than the 100 amp hour batteries, then they are becoming quite big, quite heavy, and quite bulky. So try and keep it light, or as light as you can, and the 100 amp hour battery would be a compromise. But make sure you get a deep cycle battery and not a car battery, because a car battery is actually designed differently. A car battery is designed for quick power, immediate power to start a car, where a deep cycle battery is more of a trickle of power, and they last longer. So you're better off getting a deep cycle battery. Okay, so we've seen the back of the rack. This is the front of the rack, and it looks quite complicated to some people, but let's go through it. Okay, on the top left, on the blue box there is the solar charge controller. And the solar charge controller will be controlling the two solar panels that will be on the front of the case covers. You know when the slide earlier with the two case covers that come off? Well, the solar panels will be on both sides of that, and they'll be wired into the solar charge controller. And obviously the battery will be wired into that as well. So if you are somewhere remote, then you can actually take off the covers of the box and point them in the direction of the sun, and then start charging up the battery. Plus the solar charge controller has USB as well, which is pretty good. Underneath the solar charge controller is what's called a trickle charger. And obviously what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't overcharge the battery when it's on the mains. So what a trickle charger does, it trickle charges the battery, and when the battery is full, it stops. And then obviously if the battery goes down, obviously it's there, it'll pick up again and start trickle charging. So that means that as soon as you're ready to disconnect and take the unit away, you know that the battery is fully charged, and you can monitor that trickle charge at any time. Okay, besides that is in the middle is a speaker, and the speaker is there, which is connected to the CB radio, just so that, because in the CB radio speaker is actually in the case, and you probably won't hear it as clear. So if you have an external speaker, then you'll be able to hear it straight away. And beside the speaker is a little headphone jack as well, which if you want to keep it quiet and you have to stay quiet, then you can plug in a set of headphones. The CB radio is a radio called the DX5000. Now you could buy cheaper CB radios, and you could buy smaller CB radios, but the DX5000 is actually a 30 watt radio, and it has AM, FM, USB, LSB, a PA system on it as well. And it has a number of frequencies. It covers a wide range of frequencies and 30 watts of power. So it's a good radio to have if you're going to be communicating. So that's why I recommend the DX5000 or something similar that has a little bit of power, and it has definitely a range of frequencies that you can cover on CB radio. Okay, underneath the DX5000 CB radio, you just have a cigarette lighter adapter, a voltage checker, and again USB ports as well. Always handy to have a few extras just in case you need them. Right underneath the cigarette lighter adapter is an actual monitor system, and it monitors the voltage, the current, and the power. And you really need to know that, because the whole idea of when you're standalone as a prepper is you need to know how many watts you're using, what power you're using, because you want to make sure that you're not using too much, otherwise your battery will run down very, very quickly. So you need to be able to monitor that, and having a monitor on it would be quite good, quite handy. And beside that is just an antenna socket. So the radio socket on the back is then wired to that, and then when you have a magnetic antenna which you can put on the car, you can run the antenna cable and just screw it into that socket there, which will be connected to the radio, so you can use the actual radio itself. So that's all I think we really need. Now there's just a couple of additional things that we could cover. So one is a light, because if you're somewhere dark, you need to have a little bit of light, and something that doesn't take a lot of power but gives a lot of light, like an LED light, 12 volt, which you have on the left. And the heater beside it again is 12 volt. So although it's only a small little 12 volt heater, you know, if your hands are cold and you can plug that in and get a bit of heat from it, well then that's brilliant. And if you're in a small room, then I'm not saying it's going to heat the room, but any heat is going to be better than nothing. So that's a small heater that you could use. Again, you have to be careful of the power you're using and how much power you use. So you have to be aware of that. And obviously, last but not least, basically this is a inverter, a 500 watt inverter. And I know some people might be saying, well, it's good having an inverter. Yes, you could have an inverter and you could bring along an inverter and wire in an inverter as well. I just don't see the point. If you're in a remote location, there won't be many 230, 240 volt items you need to plug in an inverter. Now, I suppose it's the old saying, it's better to have it and not need it, and need it and not have it, and I agree. If you can afford it and you can get an inverter, why not? Let's have it there just in case. But I don't think it's going to be that necessary, but if you can afford it, then it would be a good idea. So what you see now are the two solar generator boxes that I built and I use myself. The one on the back is a 1000 watt inverter, and it's got 110 ampere hour battery in there, and that is the one I use, that when power goes in my house I can actually plug that into my household mains. I have a transfer switch which I switch over and plug that in, and I can have my house on emergency power, which is very handy, and it has been used in the past and it come in handy. It was really good. The other box, the yellow box, is a 500 watt inverter, and it's a smaller battery. It's an 80 ampere battery. And I use that as a more of a mobile unit, and I would use that to plug in the TV and the Skybox or something like that. So if you want to watch TV, then it's handy to be able to plug that in and watch TV. And then the other box is used for the mains in the house when it's switched over. So there you go. So that is the two boxes that I built. I haven't built the other box yet. I'm thinking about building it. So I would just say to people, what way would you design it yourself? What would you have in your box? Your prepper box, your standby kit, if you needed to pack up and get out quickly? What items would you have from a technical point of view? Taking into account that you need to make sure you're not using a lot of power, but you need communications and some kind of power. So, and you can get 12 volt devices out there. You can get 12 volt microwaves, you can get 12 volt cookers, and there's a few things you can get. Truck drivers use an awful lot of that technology. So there is technology out there based on 12 volts. Now, if you wanted, you could buy two batteries, and you could either have 200 amp hours, which will give you more wattage, or you could wire up the two batteries where you have 24 volts. So it'll give you a higher voltage. So it depends on what way you wire the batteries. But I hope this was useful for some people, and just give you my thoughts on the whole prepper solution. And maybe I might build it. I don't know. I have to see. I'll think about it. But I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, by all means leave a comment below. And if you like my channel, subscribe, as I will do more videos. Anything else you want to see or want me to talk about, I'll be happy to do that. Just send me a message or leave a comment.